Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for tuning in today. I'm Billy Mitchell, Editor-in-Chief of FedScoop, and today I'm joined by the CIO of GSA, Mr. David Shive. David, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Billy. I'm looking forward to the conversation today. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, and I hope you're holding up safe and healthy outside of GSA headquarters during this crazy time. And I know the entire federal government right now is, faced with very different state of operations, and things are a little crazy with the COVID-19 pandemic. But I wanted to take the opportunity to start our conversation today by discussing how your office has had to adjust to this new norm of the coronavirus, and what's been your focus during this time? What challenges might you have faced, and what kind of steps maybe have you taken to adjust to the new norm?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Billy. Excuse me. It's been business as usual for GSA. We were already a largely mobile-enabled organization. We started that down that path about 5 years ago, and so sliding into the current regime under the national emergency didn't require too much change. We did some stress testing beforehand just to make sure that all of our infrastructure is going to work well, that employees were trained who are not often teleworkers, and did a little bit of tuning kind of around the edges, but it really wasn't a lot different. We've been very pleased to be able to demonstrate to our partners that we can do all of the work of GSA and from a remote environment. And of equal importance, we've been able to demonstrate to the employees of GSA that we can operate in such kind of a critical time effectively in a way that safeguards their interests and protects them and their families and stuff like that. We've been very proud of that. We made an investment, 5 or 6 years ago, and have been using it very heavily since then. But that investment has really been paying off lately.
Absolutely. And we've heard of, many cases of that across the federal government. I wrote a piece recently that, Suzette Kent and other CIOs talked about, the importance of modernization and how it led to this moment actually not going as bad as it possibly could have. But I would love to follow up in it seems like you guys are in a good position that maybe you haven't had to change much because you made those investments early on, but will there be any sort of lasting impacts of the pandemic on your organization? We've heard others who have spun up telework and other things that will probably stick around, or is it more of, like you said, that, you made these modernization investments years ago, and it's those things are going to last?
So there's two parts to the answer. One is, yeah, there will be a lasting impact because we did experience a couple of challenges. The challenges were focused around, like I mentioned, tuning our infrastructure, but also with our people. We found out that there's a difference between telework enabled and telework ready. And so we found that to be truly a mobile enabled organization, everybody needs to be telework ready, which means you test things and you tune things to make it work better. But we also found that we needed to change the way that we trained our people. Instead of just doing the occasional telework day and seeing if things work, try to express the complex business of GSA in a mobile or remote environment for an extended period of time on a regular basis, kind of like a recurring stress test on the system. So that's one of the things that we learned, and that will start to impact what we do in the future. The other lasting impacts are less super technical and more about change management and making sure our workforce is readied for any circumstance or eventuality. So GSA, we're pretty forward leaning when it comes to use of technology in the government space, but within that kind of forward leaning organization, we have an arc of capabilities across our workforce. On one end is people who are relatively new to federal service, who are digital natives, who've known no different way of operating. They've grown up with cell phones and PCs and technology in their hands from the formative stages, and who latch on to those technologies very well in their private lives and in the workplace. And then on the other end of the spectrum are people who have either been resistant to technology for any number of reasons, or who have not been heavy technology users in their personal lives or in the workplace. What we found is that during the current national emergency, it's forced our population to double down on the use of technology, because without it, we haven't been able to do the mission of GSA. And GSA is completely full of dedicated public servants who are mission focused. And so they've had to do a quantum leap forward with their use of technology to be able to sustain that mission. And one of the things that we'll look to sustain once the pandemic is over and sustain the lasting impact of that is to codify the gains there, so that people don't retreat back into non-technology use, but instead, because we're seeing great value with the use of technology, we're seeing the mission is enabled, work velocity is increased, the quality of the work is increased, and of course we want to sustain that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a lot of what we've heard as well. The change management's a big piece. Kind of changing gears a little bit. We noticed that you have a little bit of a new leadership role in the Federal CIO Council. Congrats on that. But would love to hear what that means for you and your participation in the CIO Council, what that role entails. What can you tell us about it?
Right. Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. I was honored to be named the vice chairman of the CIO Council. It's an important position, and I have some big shoes to fill following after Joe Klimovich, who I can't believe he retired, but he actually did. It's an important role. From that position, we're able to, Suzette and I are able to do things like look at the priorities that are expressed in the president's management agenda and tweak and tailor those using technology as the outcome, and to get good business outcomes for the federal government. I'm excited to be at kind of the inner circle there, thinking about how we can possibly do that. I'm excited to be able to give feedback from my experience at GSA, my experience out in the private sector, experience in state and local government, to see how policies and initiatives come down through the CIO Council and out to agencies. I got to be honest, though, the thing that I'm most excited about is to be able to take the work that I've been doing in the CIO Council for a long time, working very closely with CIOs and CISOs. I'm excited to be able to kind of double down on that work and work very closely with the CIOs of other agencies to say, how as an entire organization can we further the positive impact of the use of technology against the federal mission. So super excited about the role. I'm really honored to be a part of the team.
Great. Well, congrats again. Looking, obviously COVID-19 is going to be around for a while, but one day it will be a post-COVID-19 era, and we'll kind of look at it in the rearview mirror. But what are some of your continuing priorities around digital government and modernization as a CIO GSA? If COVID-19 weren't happening right now, what kind of things would you be focused on and pushing forward with?
Yeah, that's a great question. So working under a national emergency, it's a great honor to work on behalf of the citizens of the United States during this really important time. But the work of government doesn't just start and stop with the response to the national emergency. And so we've continued to work on a variety of things. Velocity is down in some of these spaces, of course, but we've continued to work on our digital transformation. So like I mentioned earlier, GSA is a bit forward-leaning when it comes to the use of technology. I would guess that we were working under kind of a version 1.0 model of becoming a digital entity. We'd taken analog processes and paper processes and turned them into digital versions of themselves. And we've seen some really good outcomes. We've seen the quality of the work go up. We've seen the speed at which people get stuff done go up, and those are all really great outcomes. But that's not really a digital organization. So we're focusing our time and energy on that pivot to kind of version 2.0, and that's where we take a look at not only is something pivoted from an analog to a digital version, but is it like digital native? Is it from the very beginning of a work task? Have you thought about it as a digital product and a digital process? Have you made it the most efficient thing possible? Are you doing it in 5 steps instead of 20 steps? We're also looking at, do those steps, should they even exist anymore? Are they bound by old legacy government? Are we dealing with not only technical debt, but business process debt that's built up over time? Trying to drive that business process re-engineering in there from a digital standpoint, saying, if we use modern digital tools, what's the least number of steps and the least number of things we can do to accomplish a particular mission task? And then the final outcome, and frankly, this is one of the most important pieces that we're looking at, is when you've finished some mission task, can you then derive even more value out of that? Is the output some digital record, some digital piece of information in a database that you can then do analytics on, that you can then use to look back and possibly additionally refine the business process? Can you apply machine learning and AI to it? Can you mash those digital elements together with disparate mission focus areas and learn some things and do better government on behalf of the citizens we're serving? This is what our citizens are experiencing out in their personal lives, and they're right to expect that their government's going to operate the same way. So we're focusing some attention to express government to the citizens we're serving in that way. The problem is, if you're a Silicon Valley startup, it's reasonably easy to build that ecosystem. If you are a 100-year-old company like General Motors or somebody like that, it's a little harder because of that technical debt and that business process debt and that regulatory debt that's baked into all of these processes. But we're determined to do that here at GSA, even though we're a 100-year-old agency. We're determined to try to do that, and then help some of our partners maybe do the same thing as well.
Awesome. That sounds very cool. I think we have time for one final question. And I'd love to just ask if there's any larger projects or efforts your office is working on that are key to GSA's mission of supporting federal customers and the American citizens that kind of point to the progress you guys are making in the digital effort, in the digital world.
Right. Like any good IT shop, I try to make sure that my strategic objectives align with the administrator's strategic objectives. IT done for IT's sake is a big waste of time, but when it's aligned as an enabling force for the business mission of an entity, whether it's commercial or government, that's always a good thing. So we have 3 areas that we're focused on that are aligned with the administrator's strategic initiatives for GSA. One, she's asked us to continue tech modernization. We've done a good job there. We're 52% out into the cloud and 73% off-prem and all that great stuff, but there's still tech modernization that we have to do. We've done all the big things, so now we're down to modernizing at the component level, and we actually received some technology modernization funding to help us do that, to do some application and database and core infrastructure modernization, and create a playbook and a roadmap that other agencies might use as we do this down at the component level rather than at the whole system level. So we're doing that, sharing those findings out through our playbook for modernization that's out on tech.gsa.gov. We're also continuing our work in cybersecurity. The work of government is hard and difficult, but we have an obligation to make sure that the things we do and the data we produce is secure. And so we'll continue to focus time and effort there, and then work with our partners at CISA at NIST and places like that, with Grant Schneider at the Federal CISO to share any good things that we're doing and maybe express those out to our federal partners. And then on data management, and this goes back to that kind of digital mindset where anything we do, anything we produce creates a viable digital, record or product that you can then further act on to get greater value out of that. We've made a lot of investment in some deep analytics and data science capabilities here within GSA. We've made a big investment in training our people to positively impact and affect those data. But we suspect that we have some more work to do there so that we can start to act on it even more effectively by using things like AI and machine learning, things like that. So those are three of the kind of many areas where we continue to march, even though we're in the middle of a national emergency.
I'm sure you have your hands full, but that's all great work. David Shive, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you and your family stay safe and healthy, and I hope that we can talk again in person soon.
Great. Thanks, Billy. Appreciate the conversation.
Thanks, Dave.